Hey, good afternoon. I have not done a live presentation in quite a while, and so I'm so sorry, guys. Here I am today to talk about cranial sacral therapy. So, let me give you a little background on cranial sacral therapy, as long as we've got a few extra minutes. And trust me, I try to get rid of this glare, and I cannot seem to do it here in my house. Anyway, cranial sacral therapy actually started out as part of osteopathy. It actually still is. So it started in the 1890s when an osteopathic physician, or he was going to be a physician, in school was studying, and he noticed that the construction of the bones of the head, all the different bones of the head, look at it and see how many bones there are of the head, is all of these different bones. Actually, why would we have all different bones? So that they move. So he began to experiment. So it wasn't until the middle of the 1970s that an osteopathic physician actually brought cranial out of the osteopathic like enclave. And the other osteopaths were PO'd at the time that he did that. And he was teaching it actually to PTs. So now it's actually spread where a lot of people are just independent practitioners of osteopathy. I personally still stand in the place that I think cranial sacral therapy should be part of a bigger picture and not just only a standalone therapy. Um, because there's oftentimes when there are things that are going on in the body that will restrict the cranial from operating in the way it's supposed to. So let's talk a little bit about like what it all consists of. So we have the cranial sacral therapy consists of working on the head with all of the different bones, okay? All of these different bones. I like the colored skull because it actually shows you all sorts of, it shows you where the bones are, where the joints are between the bones, and so forth. And why is it called cranial sacral? So here we have a sacrum. Now the sacrum, this is your sacrum. This is the bone that is at the bottom of your spine. So it's cranial, sacral, the other end, therapy. So it consists of the bones of the head, the sacrum itself. There are 3 layers of membrane inside the head. Okay, these 3 layers of membranes are called the meninges. Okay, the meninges, and when you have a meningitis, it's an inflammation, either viral or bacterial inflammation of those membranes that are inside the cranium. And what it does is they anchor, those 3 membranes anchor on this hole at the bottom of your head, okay, and then continue as the tube around your spinal cord. And what it does then is goes in and anchors inside your sacrum. So those are 2 parts. You have the bones, you have the membranes, and there is also circulating within the 2 deeper layers of membranes is the cerebral spinal fluid. The cerebral spinal fluid circulates through the head and around that cord and down and all the way into the sacrum. So why is it important for us to work and do this cranial sacral therapy? So let me tell you a little story here. I always tell this to my classes when I'm teaching, is that when Dr. Sutherland, who was that osteopath in school who figured this out in the 1890s, because he studied, then he went deeply into cranial sacral therapy and really studying how all of this works. So he did experiments on himself. So what he did was, remember the old football helmets were leather. So he actually would put the football helmet on and tighten different parts, tighten down on the football helmet, tightening at different bones until his wife got fed up with his personality changing. Now, isn't that interesting? That he would have changes in his personality based upon tensions that were put into the bones of his head. Now that's a statement, guys. So anyway, so she stopped him. She's like, you can't do that anymore. But so I don't know if she actually said that, but whatever it was like the experiment was intense. So here's the deal, is that we get a lot of things happening to our head. The very first thing is, well, in utero, you can have your head stuck under the rib cage, stuck inside mom's hip, go down into the birth canal and hang out there. You know, with twins, you can have a lot of the one twin sitting on top of the other twin, and then there's the birth itself, which is always very challenging and very traumatizing to the bones of the head. Even, even if you're a planned C-section, even if you're a planned C-section, so there is something that happens, there's a birth trauma that happens, and we all have it. There's also hopefully ways in which to kind of mitigate it. So so what we need to look at is, and I never know exactly how to say this, is that the cranial system, the head, and these membranes, bones, and fluid all have a two-phase of movement, okay? So this is called primary respiration. And primary respiration, guys, has nothing to do with your breath, because primary respiration is happening as soon as in the womb. As we've developed, there's a primary respiration, and it's almost like, and they do call it inhalation and then exhalation. So that is happening in the cranial sacral system. Actually every part of your body has these two-phase movements. But the cranial sacral system is supposed to express that inhalation and exhalation. So the deal is when things happen to our heads, it doesn't do that. It won't express it fully. It may be lesser. It may be one side's more full, or it expresses it in a different way, or it doesn't express it at all. The more of that we have, where we have less and less expression in the cranial sacral system, the more changes in ourselves we have. So let me switch a hair here and say that we actually have an auto-regulating system, like an inner doctor. So we all have an inner doctor in us, and the inner doctor, which is this auto-regulating system, our cranial sacral system is part of that. So when I have things happen to my head or my cranial system or my sacrum, what it will do is it will reduce the ability of my inner doctor to actually work, okay? So, and this includes the more stressed I am, and the more stressed I am, the more injuries I get, my inner doctor becomes less and less able to handle everything. So, my cranium, the more tensions I have there, the greater my symptoms become. So whenever I explain this, I always explain that there are physical symptoms, and then there's psychological, emotional symptoms. So the physical symptoms they tend to be, there's like a group of them, and you don't have to have all of them, but we have a tendency to see a bunch of them. Is that one thing is constipation is a big one for these kinds of tensions and reduction in my body's ability to work. I have a dysregulation in my sleep. It's difficult to fall asleep. I also can have higher muscle tone. I can have higher blood pressure. I can have a reduced immune system working. This is the physical side. So the other side is anxiety, worry, panic, aggression, shy. So you can see, and it kind of expands from there, so you can really see that the more tensions I have in my cranial sacral system, the more it elevates my fight or flights and reduces my auto this autonomic nervous system from being able to work the way it is supposed to work. This is kind of sad. So one of the deals with a cranial sacral practitioner is that they're going to have to, read into your head and see what kinds of patterns, compressions, and torsions and reduction of the expression in this system. Okay, so here's one of the really interesting things, or at least I think is one of the interesting things, is that when someone has a lot of tensions in their head, right? You have to let the body tell you what it is, or the head tell you what it is that you need to do. Okay, so it is an interesting and a difficult work to learn, this cranial sacral work. It is so subtle on one hand, and then it's so impossibly absolute on another. So when, there's lots of people that are learning a lot of cranial sacral, and you have to be able to, when you're doing cranial sacral, you have to read, like I said, what comes first, but also you have to understand how the mechanisms inside of our head is working and work with it in order to get it to open and to get it expressing itself in that inhalation and exhalation kind of pattern again. So there's a lot of cranial out there, and I'll say this for myself, is that I started learning cranial sacral in 1990. Within a year, I began to help the person that I learned from. I started to go around and teach with him. And I have to say that I taught with him for many years, and then I went to osteopathic, that was 1990, and in 2003 I went to osteopathic school, and it was then that I actually began to understand what it was I was doing. Hopefully I'm helping my students learn a lot faster than when I did. But it is a very subtle but difficult kind of work to learn and challenging, but it's so huge. It's huge. Because here is a scenario that I want to kind of tell you, is that when a client comes in, okay, and anybody who's a massage therapist or working with people, chiropractor, PTs, and all this stuff, you have experienced the people coming in to you who lay down and either they are telling you, I need you to work really deeply on me, or you're feeling their tissues and everything is like so rigid, because that rigidity is telling you that the fight or flights is on and that there's a tremendous amount of cranial sacral tension. Or you see somebody nervous or agitated. Another one that's going to tell you you need to do cranial sacral before you need to do body work. Even if they're telling you their neck is killing them or their low back is killing them, you can't help the body to make changes until the body is actually in a calmer state. And that is one of the big reasons why we really want to do cranial sacral work on someone. Well, you want to make the assessment that says, yes, this body is not going to be able to receive and make changes until such time as their system is calmed down some. And the best way I know how to do that is through cranial sacral therapy. But like I said when I started this talk, I never look at cranial sacral therapy as the end all and be all of everything. So it does have its place, and hopefully, you guys can understand that there is this, that anything happening to the head, whether it's concussions or birth trauma or whatever, it increases the tensions within our system, and it can change our personality. So hopefully, this kind of gives you a little piece of insight into how important it is cranial sacral therapy as a therapy is, but at the same time, how it's not the only therapy to actually do. It should be in your bundle of therapies, I believe. Or you can specialize in it and then have people send you people and you send people to other people for the other stuff. So anyway, I hope I made this clear and made it understandable with a system that's a little more difficult to explain. I mean, going into to explain how it is that it actually works is, I don't know, it took me 19 years or something. Now I've been doing it 32 years and it took me 19 years. So anyway, I hope if you have any questions, please, and if you have any thoughts about the next body work topic, please go ahead and message us or email us or anything. Glad to have you. I do want to give you the heads up that so it is November now. In the beginning, I start a new training session once a year. And in the beginning of January, I have my next training session starting. We have a lot of people signed up already. There's just a few slots left. So if you were thinking about coming to school, oh, we'd love to have you. Please contact us. Go through the website, anchraminstitute.com, and just email us or sign up. That'd be awesome. Love to see you. Thanks, and have a great day.